Democracy is the thing that separates good countries from evil ones, and so democracy must also be what sorts good games from bad, right? Well, in reality, most game development studios are run like totalitarian dictatorships. All of the decisions are made from within, and they might choose to listen to you, the player, if it pleases them, but it usually doesn't. And well, Minecraft is at least a step closer than most studios because they do allow the community to vote every single year, and the most voted on feature is something they agree to add to the game. But this democratic system falls into all of the same problems that regular democracy does, and so here is an in-depth analysis of each of those. Why is the Minecraft mob vote a flawed representation of our real world? You didn't need to know, but you're gonna find out today. The purest form of democracy that exists would be direct democracy. This is where you would ask the electorate every single time that you want to do something, what do you think should be done? And it's a really great way to guarantee democratic spirit. However, you can quickly realize that although it's great and everyone will always be 100% behind exactly what's happening, the reality is that stopping what you're doing every time there's a divisive decision and asking people what they think should be done is a really bad way to run not only a real government, but also an organization trying to get actual development done. Stopping the process just to ask what people think is something you see a lot in the real world when we have an election. We always have to kind of stop passing laws and doing the real things while people go out and try and get the votes. So in the real world, we use something called representative democracy. So instead of every single second and every single decision having a vote, instead every few years, depending on where you live, it could be 2 to 6 or even more, but depending on where you live, every 2 to X years, you have some form of election where you elect a representative who will make decisions based on what they think you want. This is a really great way to simplify things down, and then the layer up from that would be a party system democracy. These tend to form naturally as people form into groups, so that rather than trusting a representative, that representative is part of a group, and you can vaguely trust that the group has your ideas in heart. And so Minecraft, when they made their system, actually skipped all the way up the ladder to party system because we don't have a choice of picking anything we want to be added to the game. We don't have a choice of, oh yeah, give us an idea, we'll work on it over the next X amount of time and then we'll add that to the game. No, we give them, they give us the ideas. There are a set number of ideas out there that are directly chosen, and then we can vote on all of those. What will happen if you vote for the sniffer? What will happen if you vote for the tough golem? Honestly, they give you a rough idea. The group does espouse ideas, but you can't be 100% sure that when you vote for something, you're going to get exactly that. As we saw with the monster of the night sky, you probably weren't voting for the slow falling potion, and yet it came anyway. And as you're going to see in a real life democracy, you might vote for a party that has this one belief that you share so strongly with them, but they might never do something relating to that. And when I mentioned, by the way, that democracy is kind of this free tier system, there's a fourth tier you can add on top of this, which would be maybe what we would call a sham democracy. This is something they have, sadly, in places like Hong Kong, where despite how it could have perhaps been done better, where the government parties in charge, the candidates on which you can vote on, are not just decided by these collection of ideas, but instead they're handpicked by a governmental figure of some being. And so in the case of the Minecraft mob vote, they don't take a tally of what ideas people would like. They don't try to work out, like, some people might like a hostile mob, some people might like a mob that has a really interesting function and use for farms. Instead, they just kind of guess and say, here are 3 things we'd like to do. Tell us which of the 3 things we should do. It is many layers removed from the direct democracy you could have, and this is where limited choices become an issue. Because although true democracy could not work in any online fashion, I mean, ask Mountain Dew how that goes down. If you're not familiar, their most popular flavor was I won't say that out loud, but they had every single time you allow true democracy on the internet, people prove why you shouldn't have true democracy on the internet. But when you go further and further up this ladder, you get closer and closer to the idea not of real representation in a system, but instead of, well, you get to vaguely steer the ship a little bit as long as you go from one of the pre-approved directions we're choosing, which is where limited choices are a problem, not just in the Minecraft mob vote, but truly in the real world. If you wanted to pick a political party that would nuke the country that you live in, can you vote for them? Do you think they'll take charge? Do you think they'll actually implement what you do? I don't think so. Is that a good thing? Well, for the rest of us that don't want to be nuked, Probably yes, but not for you, Mr. I want to nuke myself. And in the same way, if you want to add a mob to Minecraft that's a giant elephant and it's got spikes on its mouth and it shoots shulker bullets at you and it drops a new enchantment, well, you can't have it because you'll never be allowed to vote on it, and that is one of the tragedies of democracy. It is a limiting factor on what truly can be done. But speaking of what truly can be done, when political parties are elected, they're elected on a platform of more and less popular ideas. Some of these ideas will be the cornerstone of their campaign, and some of these ideas will be hidden in the background on some list of pledges somewhere that only political junkies care about, and in reality, most people aren't actually voting for, even though they're voting for. And in reality, there are far too many of these to ever do for a single term in office, and so, while the first few months might give momentum, it takes years to enact the real changes that you might have voted for if they come at all. There are many things that many people have voted for very directly in their lives that have never come to fruition because they haven't been fulfilled, because such is the power of a mandate. It is not a guarantee something will be implemented, it is merely a proof that people might want that thing to happen. Anyway, so goats were voted for in late 2019, but it took till March 2021 for them to be in a real development build of Minecraft, and it took until even later that year for them to actually be playable, which I would have to say, that is not the greatest of all time as far as speed of putting something into the game goes. You get it? Because it's a goat. People question democracy when rulers would rather do things they weren't elected for before things they were, like was the case of the entire update for bees coming out within 3 months, while the user-suggested votes, which were even, in fact, directly given to us by Mojang as an option, took closer to 23. In reality, democratic will is important, but so too is wanting to make a change. A mandate is just an idea, is just the ability to do something. The actual implementation depends on the people in charge deciding to do the actual thing, which doesn't happen all of the time. It might happen eventually, or it might be on the plans to happen eventually, but what if something stops it? What if something changes it? What if it's implemented but in such a way that it doesn't even really feel correct? There are countless examples of all those things happening in the real democracy. People will always look to authority and ideologues to help them make sense of the complex situations we find ourselves in, and uniting around one of 3 options for a mob vote is genuinely hard or genuinely complex for a lot of people, which is why we tend to subdivide into the smaller groups we actually represent. I mean, some people will want better plants, some people might just want the cutest mob, and some people will want a rich law, and so finding someone who can collect all of your arguments into one place, who can effectively be the representative of your opinions, is something that people find to be very important, which is why some people's endorsements are always seen to be important in the real world and in Minecraft. And whether it's true or not, the popular narrative for Minecraft Live a couple of years ago is that one YouTuber influenced the community vote so much so that we ended up with the glow squid instead of the second place option. That is a heck of a claim, but it proves the point that people believe that some people have massive influence over others, which is crazy because people believe that YouTubers have so much influence over their audience, but even if I directly ask you to subscribe right now, 98% of you won't. If I can't even convince you to subscribe, how am I going to influence you to change your vote? That's my real question here. However, if people are correct and people with influence, people with power are the ones who really start to change votes for enough people to matter, then who truly decides the winner? Is it the will of the people that matters in a world that is filled with media, whether that be political punditry in the real world, or whether that be Minecraft YouTube videos talking about it here? If we are filled with all of these media commentators, is it the media that is deciding, or is it the people? And a lot of people would say, actually, yeah, the people with power have a disproportionate influence. However, just because they have a disproportionate influence, does that mean they can shape things exactly how they want? Or does that just mean that they can slightly lean things in one direction or another? In fact, in a way, is democracy not just people trying to slightly lean things? It's just some people have a much more powerful lean than others, but is democracy meant to have a system like that? These are the points that make you realize that actually, even the truest democracy is flawed, and what we have is not the truest democracy. However, what are you really voting for? People like to say in real life, you voted for this, as if voting for a president is what causes 9/11, COVID, or a war in Ukraine. We like to do that in Minecraft too, though. As much as I like to make fun of it, people do say, oh, you voted for the dumb glowy squid, or the berries, or whatever this thing is. But did they really? The truth is that a vote for some people is just a vote for a simple concept, which are expanded upon by the media, like mentioned before, but are also truly decided upon by the people who implement those decisions. A representative democracy, in theory, has someone who has your best interests at heart when they do something, but when they have your best interests rather than your direct will and your direct words at play, there is always going to be a conflict between what you want and what you're going to get, what is good for you, air quotes. And, honestly, if you describe the Phantom as what's good for us, maybe it's a good example of what we wanted, but what we didn't realize we would hate literally, 2 days after it was added to the game. And so, truly, what are you voting for when immediately after a bad decision is made, everyone has to step in and go, okay, how do we make this actually good? The glow squid, as an example, was just going to be a squid that glows. They had to add the glow item frame to give it some additional use to the world, but truly, it seems as though people make a lot of decisions which immediately we have to question and say, is that what you voted for? And if you don't know what someone voted for when they literally vote for one of a binary set of options, or, that one of 3 options in some cases, how can any democracy have any legitimacy truly? And the answer is it can't. If you have to interpret what people are voting for, everyone's going to interpret it differently, and we've immediately moved away from the concept of direct democracy and referendums and into the world of vague democracy like we have in the real world, where there's definitely people listening, but who knows how closely they're listening. It's clear that people in power think they know best. The people who are interacting with a system of power the most do believe they understand it better, and truth be told, they probably do. Whether it's a Mojang developer or whether it's someone who, plays around with the lawmakers all day, they understand what's actually going on. So why would they ask us for decisions rather than doing it themselves? In a lot of their own minds, the probably answer is, yeah, maybe this whole system is just a show to keep the power being checked in some way. However, it is a very good point, I think you'll find, that actually people, when you give them the pure right to decide everything, they'll make bad decisions. I mean, if we let people decide, we'd have capital punishment and guns in Minecraft. Although, don't Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms? Shouldn't they have guns in Minecraft? Actually, wait, is Minecraft skirting that law with the polar bears? Adding bear arms to the game as the... I reckon that's what they're doing. Incidentally, by the way, the polar bears prove that maybe Minecraft players do know Minecraft better than developers, because although the last 3 mobs we voted on as a community were, okay in some cases, they were all significantly better than the polar bears. Even the flaws in the mobs we voted for, and there are flaws for all of them, even those can be put down to Mojang's implementation of them, whereas the polar bear, who can they blame for that? They only have themselves to blame. When you leave someone entirely insulated from the will of the people, they do something the people don't really like. When you let people interact with the systems of power too much, they make a bad system too. And so the reason we seem to have a vote is because it's better than us not doing so, but also we know that we shouldn't have too much power. Every democratic system seems to exist not out of love, but instead out of a begrudging responsibility. And indeed, it makes you question, if they really don't love the fact that we have to vote, does your vote even matter? No, your vote does not mathematically matter, at least not on the country scale. A lot of local elections have been decided by one vote, or even been tied so that one more person voting could have been the deciding factor, and this will keep on happening till the end of time all around the world. But will you single-handedly pick the president? Or will you single-handedly pick your country's prime minister? Or will you single-handedly pick the mob vote? Well, the answer is that if you're not part of the Illuminati, you're not making any of these decisions yourself. You're just a single cog in the machine that has so many more cogs that if you weren't in the machine, it wouldn't make a mathematical difference. However, here's the thing, given that a mob vote has not been won by one vote yet, and given that there are a lot of people who feel like, why am I even doing this? I'm just one part of millions. If enough people start to believe that their vote is worthless, then that has an impact on elections. Even though you know your vote is mathematically worthless and does not matter in the slightest because it's going to get steamrolled by a bunch of people who have weird opinions that you can't even slightly relate to, even though that is probably true, mathematically, statistically true. If everyone decides that I'm not going to vote just because it doesn't make sense, then all of a sudden the entire system stops working. The entire system is predicated on every single person going, yeah, this doesn't work for me as an individual, but it works for all of us as a collective, and truly, that is what democracy is meant to be, a collective pooling of our opinions, and so your vote doesn't matter on any mathematical or statistical or even on the engineering and the system level sense, but it does make sense on the actually trying to work out opinions on the scale that big sense. And honestly, rather than affecting 1/10 millionth of the mob vote, your time might be better spent elsewhere. But if you enjoy engaging with the system, isn't that the point? No, the point of democracy is meant to be that you change something. But, you know, enjoyment's a good secondary goal. By the way, democracy is this deep belief that everyone has. I don't believe that it's actually the definition of a good or evil country, but many people genuinely will. And so we've got this deeply seated belief that it is the greatest way to do something. However, every country does it different. This is something that's true for so many of these values that we hold so clearly, whether it's like, how much of your money should the government be entitled to when you earn it? Some countries say that can go up as high as 66%, incidentally, including Sweden, where Minecraft is developed. Some countries, like Singapore, go down to 24%, and some countries just say, no, why would we take your money off you? That's not the way we're running our country. And so given that, something as drastic as how much of your money should you be in charge of making the decisions for can vary that much from country. The fact that democracy, the very way we decide how these bigger decisions are made, can vary is pretty shocking too. So I just want to bring this up as a weird fact. Did you know China had one vote? They never had another. They had one election. They're not going to have another one because, I don't know, they had one vote and that's enough for a lifetime. But in that election, everyone got 2 votes, which is kind of weird. Also, there were 5 mobs. Also, it wasn't just 2 votes. It was 2 votes every single day. And also, if you look at the totals, you can see that people were so clearly in favor of the panda that all of the other mobs didn't matter. It's really confusing, actually. And so yeah, if Minecraft added a version, by the way, also Minecraft has a version of the least popular mob anyway, that we would never just vote for a yellow dolphin in the Western Minecraft vote. Why do they get fight? You know, there's so many questions about how this vote went down or why it went down, but it did, and it happened, and it's proof that even though we hold something so clearly and dearly to our heart as democracy, it's different, and it doesn't make any sense everywhere. However, that's my final point here. To kind of conclude the entire video, it doesn't make sense, but it's still probably a good idea. Honestly, democracy is the worst system that's ever been tried. Besides all of the others, at least. One day, we could have a technocratic, meritocratic, mathematic utopia, but for now, the best system out of all the ones that we've played around with is this weird idea of asking people their opinion and then sort of sometimes implementing it. It's the best, compromise between pure totalitarianism and everyone decides all of the time, and it just about works. It's not the greatest system in the world. It's filled with flaws and holes that could go on as long as the list of flaws and holes in you as a human being, and that is honestly the simplest way to explain why democracy is flawed. When you ask the people what they want, you're going to get a system which is just as flawed as the people. Every single person has so many issues and flaws and character faults inside of them, and that is the thing that makes us human. Ultimately, the fact that our system of government is filled with so many issues and so many things that make you question its very legitimacy is one of the powers that makes sure that you know that it truly is by us. Because if a system wasn't filled with flaws and character holes and all of these issues, then would it be a system designed by humans? Well, I mean, maybe one day, but right now, I think it's better, it makes us better as people, not when we pretend democracy is a perfect utopia, which needs to be defended at all costs, but rather when we see it as something which is a good enough system which can always be improved. We can always move the system further and further away from tyranny and chaos, and I don't know what the Minecraft version of that is, like asking for more meaningful, better decisions, like why is it this year we're only having, we can ask for these things, and we can always believe that we'll do a better job next year if we truly make the case. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. If you subscribe, please do it. I'm trying to influence you. I'll give you $1 billion, maybe, probably. You don't know that I won't unless you subscribe. Okay, goodbye.